I guess you could say Plane is a pretty plain title. What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, but I think I've just watched my first big surprise of 2023, and I cannot believe it came via this movie, Plane. Yes, the movie's name is Plane. A huge thank you to Lionsgate for giving me the chance to watch this early for review. It is now in theaters, comes in at not a whopping hour 47 minutes. And trust me, it doesn't feel as long as it sounds, but that's a decent length for a movie that is really just your typical C action movie in January. It's directed by Jean-François Richet, and it stars Gerard Butler, Mike Colter, Daniela Pineda, and Tony Goldwyn. The movie's premise is very simple. Gerard Butler is this pilot who is pretty darn good at his job, and then finds himself trying to save all of his passengers. It's 14 passengers, I believe. They make a crash landing, and now they're in this jungle that's occupied by separatists, so they are trying to fight for survival. It's very much in line with Gerard Butler's movies that he's been taking lately. He's the action hero, but this time it's nice to see that Mike Colter, excuse me, is right next to him. So guys, before we get into my review, and I tell you exactly why this was pretty surprising, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies, TV, and all the news in between. So if you like reviews just like this, hit the big red button below, subscribe to that channel, hit the thumbs up button, and let me know down below in the comments which Gerard Butler movie is your favorite. I'm partial, maybe because I'm part Greek, but 300. It's his best one. Alrighty, y'all, so let's get right into the positives, and this isn't going to be a very in-depth review because the movie itself isn't layered, but that's okay because I'm so glad that this movie knows exactly what it is and doesn't try to be much more. It's an action movie with not a lot of layers, right? This movie is not complex for you to understand. It's very predictable, and yes, the dialogue is generic and not always the best part of the movie, but Gerard Butler and Mike Colter sell it enough for me to have fun with this movie. Do I kind of wish we got more of them together throughout this film? Absolutely, but I do like how this movie pins them against one another and almost together at some points. It's actually quite nice to see that because I expected this to be just another January throwaway movie, but instead it was actually pretty darn enjoyable, and I was invested in a weird way in our two leads. But honestly, the most interesting character in this movie for me was Mike Colter's Louis Gaspar, and I thought that he did a good job at, well, he's unfortunately playing the stereotypical criminal here, but he did a really good job at selling me on these action sequences. The dude is an action star, like you see it all over him. I love him as Luke Cage, and I really like him here, and by the end of the film I was thinking, I want to know more about his story. So I don't know, maybe they do a spin-off. We'll see how successful this is at the box office this weekend, but our two leads really do sell it here, and I'm not gonna lie, our supporting cast wasn't bad either. It was really good to see Daniela Pineda here in this film. She was in the live-action Cowboy Bebop series on Netflix, which unfortunately did get canceled after one season, but she was the best part of that show, and she's here again as Bonnie, a flight attendant. And I also liked Gerard Butler's co-pilot, I mean, like literally his co-pilot in this movie, Yosan An, who plays Deli, and he does such a good job, even though they really do kind of reduce his role as the film goes on to being this, you know, pilot in distress. He's really helpless against the separatists, but you know, I kind of bought it. That's the thing I keep coming back to, is that somehow I'm buying these characters. Now, I would say that there are some negatives, of course, the writing and some of the direction, but guys, there's a decent amount to chew on here that makes this worth this streaming option. Like, and hey, if you go to the movies on a cheap Tuesday, you're probably not going to be upset. I mean, our theater was clapping, they were really into it, but I really thought that this film was quite enjoyable to a degree. Now, is the whole movie enjoyable? No, and I do have some criticisms here, so I guess this would be a decent segue into the negatives, but guys, I think there is an issue with the script and direction that unfortunately bleeds into the final product, and this movie is supposed to be tense in so many moments, but I will tell you, I felt zero tension from start to finish, even when they're in the plane and they're trying to control the plane during the crash landing sequence. It felt like the VFX budget was pretty small and minimal, so they didn't have a lot of authentic looking visual effects for me to be bought into the moment. And again, the predictability element hurts this movie a whole lot, and I don't think the screenplay is as strong as it probably could be, especially the dialogue between Mike Colter and Gerard Butler. It's very cut, copy, paste. Like, we have heard this before, like the formula is present. But again, the actors tend to outwork the screenplay to make it at least a little bit digestible. And another thing that really kind of bothered me was the cinematography. I don't understand why they chose to film the action this way. I get that some of the angles were meant to be very artistic and creative, but I was actually getting a little confused at tracking the action while it was happening. Whether it was gunfights, hand-to-hand, car chase sequences, the movements felt a little distracting, and it took away from those scenes instead of adding to those moments. I get it, you gotta try to think outside the box here, but sometimes if the wheel isn't broken, don't fix it approach works with cinematography in these cheaper action films. So I thought they were maybe doing too much in these moments, and it did not necessarily tie me into the film any more than a traditional shot would have. I also was partly annoyed that they were cutting away from the in-plane sequences, and then when they're in the jungle, and they were cutting to the control room for this airline company. And even though Tony Goldwyn does a pretty darn good job in a way at being this generic and kind of convincing like crisis manager, I just don't necessarily think the cuts were as smooth. Yeah, the edits were bouncing all over the place sometimes, and I thought, why are we pulling away from this moment? I was almost getting into it, and then you take us out of the action, and it doesn't necessarily help me stay immersed in the movie. So again, you have to temper your expectations when you go in to see Plane. It's not going to be the best action movie of the year, but you know what? I'll be darned. This movie's not bad. So my final thoughts on Plane are this. Guys, if you can see this on a cheap matinee type of showing, if you can go ahead and waste away a weekend and spend possibly 2 hours in a theater, or when it comes to streaming, if you can catch this on a rainy day, I think you'll actually be satisfied with this film. This has the makings of a movie that will do much better at home on streaming than it will in the box office, because the word of mouth isn't bad right now for this film. It's rocking a 65 on Metacritic. That's really good. And for me personally, this is Gerard Butler's best movie in several years. I did not like him in Den of Thieves, so don't come at me about that. But yeah, guys, I think this movie is good enough to satisfy you for a short amount of time. I actually didn't really feel the length either, which is a plus, but it is Mike Colter and Gerard Butler that sell it for me. Did I want more Mike Colter? Absolutely. He was pretty silent for the first half of the film, didn't get many lines, but I wanted to know more about his character, so by the end, I was really invested in him, and then the credits roll, and I'm like, why? So yes, both actors did a good job. The supporting cast isn't terrible. It really does come down to some of the more generic, predictable story beats and a bad mix of creative cinematography, probably on paper, that didn't translate well to the screen. So I do wish that maybe some of the technical elements were stronger and sharper here, but for the most part, I would probably score Plane a good 3 wings out of 5. That is better than the score I gave Megan, and I stand by it. But guys, I want to know what you have to say about this film, so go ahead and get loud in the comments below when you see the movie, and let me know, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Or are you right there down the middle? And if you haven't already, hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel. We're so close to 20,000, our next milestone here on the channel, and it's all because of your support. And guys, again, I can't wait for the rest of this year. I know I've been saying it, but 2023 is producing some of my most anticipated movies in quite a while. So you're getting my reviews, my reactions, and all that news in between right here on the channel. So stay tuned. Alrighty, y'all. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. And after watching this movie, I kind of want Gerard Butler to be my pilot.